Five Nights at Freddy's has some of the most complicated lore ever, with evolving timelines through the games, books, and movies. Since FNAF 1, people have made so many theories on the lore and characters, but most are debunked by this point. With how much the FNAF games add or make changes to the lore, a lot of theories have aged bad. But what about the theories that stood the test of time? I hope you're having a great day. If not, I hope it does get better. Today, I'm going to cover FNAF theories from early theorizing that aged well. They might not be 100% correct because there's very little in Five Nights at Freddy's that is confirmed, but are theories that are now popular today or are commonly used as foundations for other FNAF theories and timelines. There are also niche theories on this list too that I think have aged well in the broader context of FNAF or are discussed a lot here on YouTube. So there's a chance you might not even have heard of some of these. Though this is part 2, you don't have to watch the videos in order. If you're new here, welcome and thank you for tuning into the channel. Purple Guy is the CEO of Fazbear Entertainment. In a post made about 11 years ago, Reddit user DakaZZS8 talked about an original theory of theirs that speculated that Purple Guy is actually the CEO of Fazbear Entertainment. They made some pretty unique points. I like how they actually gave a reason for Purple Guy to be purple. In their post, they analyzed the color and talked about how it represented wealth, luxury, and ambition. They note this as being intentional, especially with the emphasis of his purple car. See, in their interpretation of events, they painted Purple Guy as being a money-hungry CEO, that while they described him as crazy, seemed to be motivated more by money. This is a pretty cool interpretation as it implies that the murders are more so a means to an end, and the post cites a FNAF 2 minigame, which would be later revealed as Charlie Emily's death, occurring because a child crying outside is bad for business. However, in the post they didn't provide a detailed explanation for the missing children's incident. They only said it was due to supernatural events. A big piece of speculation that they draw from is the idea that the company seemingly keeps the CEO safe from investigation and from getting caught, because otherwise they wouldn't get paid. And it seems to present the Purple Guy as this wealthy man, and that was the reason they even had the budget for the animatronics. This theory says that while Purple Guy is a crazy murderer, the whole company is corrupt and are accomplices to an extent. This even includes the phone guy. I really like this theory, especially under the context of when it came out. This was at the time when everyone thought that the Purple Guy was the phone guy, and the post even gives some counter arguments for that. It seems that this user received a lot of negative feedback. A lot of their comments under the post are downvoted into the negatives, which could be due to the arguments they had with other users. At the top of their post, they say to credit their YouTube channel if you share the theory, but the link doesn't go anywhere, and they even made a video explaining this theory further that is no longer up. If I had to guess, the negative feedback could have resulted in the video getting taken down, which would be unfortunate. I tried looking for it in the Wayback Machine, but I couldn't find anything, unfortunately. It's pretty common for FNAF theorists, both creators and commenters, to be aggressive in comment sections until they're wrong and move on to the next popular theory. And it's sad if this is what resulted in the video getting deleted, as this ended up aging really well all these years later. Also, old FNAF videos are pretty fun to watch regardless. Eventually, Purple Guy would actually end up being revealed as William Afton, who is the co-founder of Fazbear Entertainment. Yeah, not all the details were right, but story-wise, I really enjoyed their reasoning. And the color purple would also end up being a detail used later on, as reversing the color would reveal a connection between Purple Guy and Springtrap in FNAF 3. This also wasn't the only Purple Guy CEO theory. They started popping up every so often in the following years, but this is one of the earliest ones I found. You play as a night guard who gets bitten in 1987 in FNAF 2. This is a theory from a YouTube video uploaded by Demos back in 2014, where he talked about FNAF 2 fan theories. While this probably wasn't the first time mentioned, early theorizing around this topic would age well in a lot of FNAF timelines covered today. In FNAF 2, we play as Jeremy Fitzgerald for the first 6 nights, and later, it was heavily theorized that the person we play as for the later nights, Fritz Smith, is actually an alias for Michael Afton, but that's besides the point. This theory stated that Jeremy Fitzgerald is a victim of the bite of 87, which would strangely result in him living the incident, but just without his frontal lobe as confirmed by the phone guy. The thing is, while this seems very likely looking back, due to FNAF 4, a lot of theorists around the time believed something different. A popular theory was that the cutscene with the crying child getting bit by Fredbear was the bite of 87, which complicates things. It seems that after theorists figured out that the FNAF 4 cutscene was the bite of 83, this theory became a lot more popular and resurfaced. Timeline-wise, it would match up, especially when using the phone guy's inclusion in the story, and would give a reason for there to be someone else taking over his shift. Strangely, while the bite of 87 is more known than the bite of 83, at least by name, strongly due to the Markiplier clip, and its also repeated use in FNAF 1, and even there being constant references in the source code of FNAF games repeating the number 87, is never explicitly shown on screen, which is definitely a writing choice. This might be a hot take, but the bite of 87 isn't really all that important to the timeline, it seems, at least compared to other events like the missing children's incident. It has a lot of theories around it, but in terms of story, all it really boils down to is off-screen world building, which is cool when setting up the atmosphere, like in FNAF 1, but it feels like one of those things where the hype around it is more important than the actual detail. Which, while it might sound like I don't like it, I think having stuff like this is important for a horror story like Five Nights at Freddy's. What it does is it creates mystery, which is important because people tend to be scared of what they don't know, and the further you go down theorizing, the more interesting it tends to get, and I think a potential reason for that are these unsolved events. There's just enough puzzle pieces around this event to get a decent interpretation, but the gaps leave people to add their own unique spin on it, which I think is awesome because sometimes a person's own imagination can end up being more compelling to them than what they see on screen. Circus Baby is a crying child's sister. In Game Theory's sister location video, released in 2016, MatPat would suggest that the Circus Baby animatronic was possessed by a girl who is a crying child's sister. Now, while this was heavily implied in sister location, this video was released before the game came out, using teaser images, trailers, and previous games. This wasn't the only theory in the video, and I'll cover another one here in a bit, but this one specifically aged ridiculously well. Up until this point, an unsolved mystery was who the girl's room in FNAF 4 belonged to, which led to a lot of theorizing. By the way, just for future reference when I talk about Game Theory's videos, I'm probably going to use MatPat and Game Theory interchangeably, but that's not exactly accurate because they are a team of people. MatPat from the beginning wasn't working alone. Not only had Stephanie also worked on the videos, but so do other people like editors and writers. I just don't have a complete list and timeline of who worked on what. Anyways, MatPat predicted that it could have belonged to the pigtail girl also in FNAF 4. He got to this point by using the colors of the dialogue text to piece together who said what, and even used FNAF World as evidence, which now wouldn't hold up because the game isn't canon. But because of the desk guy and the animatronic baby's inclusion in the game, it led MatPat to draw connections between Pigtail Girl and Circus Baby. He also mentioned how similar their designs were, which is also a neat detail that aged well, because some theorists have put together that Circus Baby's design was likely based on Elizabeth Afton's. Watching this part of the video now, there's a lot of comments like this that would age really well, even if the use of the evidence wasn't, necessarily accurate. Probably the biggest part of importance was MatPat's reasoning that this is why sister location is called sister location, and how it's a double meaning, not only for the Freddy Fazbear franchise, but also for Circus Baby being possessed by the sister of the crying child, who is an important character in FNAF 4. This was a super cool theory to explore. I really enjoyed the reasoning and evidence being put together. I really forgot just how convoluted the pieces of evidence could get in FNAF, though this could have easily been one of those things where you get the wrong formula to get the right answer. But I don't know, maybe Scott, Cawthon, and Game Theory were on the same wavelength for a bit. When we're talking about the actual storytelling, I think this is some of the best parts of FNAF. Clearly at some point, Scott wanted the story to be about the Afton family, and when we get to actually learn more about these characters, it's really interesting because there's a lot of thought put behind their character writing. It's just the way that we get the context needed to actually understand who characters like Circus Baby are. It's just a little convoluted, even after Sister Location came out. Also, cool little bonus, at 1351 in this video, you can see a ball pit image which MatPat's PNG character jumps into, which obviously doesn't predict the, FNAF Into the Pit game, but since I've been rewatching a lot of old videos looking for stuff that aged well, I thought this was a really cool detail. Sister Location takes place in a rental facility. In the same Game Theory video, there was also another theory that would age really well, being that the sister location would take place in a rental facility that rents out animatronics. At the time, because the game wasn't out yet, plenty of people assumed that it would take place in another restaurant, because, sister location, or even an underground club. But there's actually some pretty cool evidence that Game Theory used to piece together that would actually be some kind of rental warehouse of sorts. On Scott Cawthon's website, there was source code discovered to be showing repeated numbers that could be interpreted as booking days for the new animatronics. To go along with this, Reddit user MagicCraftCat discovered that Scott actually copyrighted the names of the Funtime animatronics, and weirdly one known as 0500S. Anyways, in the video, they break down some sort of schedule for renting times for each animatronic, leading to the prediction that instead of a restaurant, the sister location is more of a storage place for the animatronics, which I think is pretty cool for a couple of reasons. Not only does it distinguish itself from the other games, where it could have just ended up being a reskin of FNAF 1 or 2, with different animatronics, but it also adds to the world building and shows how services like this exist. It's also pretty cool to see this theory aging well, and I find it insane to think about how this video came out before Sister Location was even out. Also in this video, Game Theory would go over the canonicity of the FNAF books and where they stand, specifically with the Silver Eyes novel, and the reason I want to bring this up is because it's Scott's official statement on it, which I somehow missed finding before. How canon the books are in relationship to the games has been a huge debate for a while, because while they do have separate continuities, people end up cross-referencing the evidence. Moving forward, Game Theory would use this statement to assess information on the books. I'll just leave Scott's quote here and let you decide. Quote, "Sometimes the lore of something can become so crowded that you can't even tell an original story anymore. The games and books should be considered to be separate continuities, even if they do share many familiar events. The book is a reimagining of the Five Nights at Freddy's story." End quote. Hybrid animatronic, kind of foreshadowing Ennard. This one is a huge stretch, but a detail I found really cool in today's context, especially with how big the idea of the hybrid animatronic was in the fandom without necessarily having any information on it. In a video by Pretty Grumpy Bear released in 2015, she would go over tweets she received on people theorizing that instead of being a Golden Bonnie animatronic, what would later end up being Springtrap, it is actually a hybrid animatronic that is made up of different animatronics fused together, leading to the name Hybrid. In the video, Pretty Grumpy Bear would go over which parts of Springtrap, or the Springtrap animatronic, would correlate to whichever animatronic were fused together. This was before FNAF 3's release, and at the time when the trailer was already out, so all people really had were the teaser images and some gameplay footage. The reason I included it on this list is because in Five Nights at Freddy's Sister Location, there would actually end up being an animatronic that is made up of different animatronics, called Ennard. It would be made up of the different Funtime animatronics, and in the ending of the game, would be scooped into Michael Afton, wearing his body until he turned purple. The Ennard animatronic is an idea pretty close to what people were theorizing the hybrid animatronic was. And I don't think it's intentional, but it's still a pretty cool coincidence. Golden Freddy suit. In another video by Pretty Grumpy Bear, she would theorize that the Golden Freddy animatronic is actually a wearable suit, being the other one mentioned besides Spring Bonnie. This was theorized for a bit in other places too, and a good piece of evidence used is the FNAF 3 minigame, showing Fredbear and Spring Bonnie being paired together. A lot of people would also point out how visually the Golden Freddy animatronic suit would be similar to the Springtrap one when not activated, and how their poses are really similar, though this kind of falls apart with Wither Bonnie's pose in the FNAF 2 trailer. Anyways, in the video, she would cover how the Golden Freddy suit is also a Springlock suit, and this would age well in other media and games where people would wear a Golden Freddy suit. Though there is a lot of debate over if the suit is the same, with some people eventually theorizing that there would actually be different Spring Bonnie and Fredbear suits. Beyond it aging well, I think this is so cool story-wise with the parallel between Springtrap and Golden Freddy. Not only are they in direct conflict, but there are so many cool details between them across different theories. With the crying child possessing Golden Freddy, there's that shared fate of William Afton also possessing a Springlock suit, and so they share that in common. Honestly, it must suck being an Afton family member. Between the 2 out of 3 children getting killed in an accident with the animatronic, and Michael getting ratatouille'd from the inside by Ennard, it's no wonder the mom left. Probably. She might be in Ballora for all I know. Anyways, Golden Freddy is also theorized to be possessed by Cassidy, or even another kid, but the point there is that there are some pretty huge theories that William Afton was brutal in the way he killed the kid that would end up possessing Golden Freddy, and so it's fitting for William Afton to end up springlocked and dying in a horrific way, also leading him to end up in a broken suit. I'm talking a bit broadly here. The theories around Golden Freddy and the souls that possess him are divisive, but even still, just the detail of it being a Springlock suit that was paired with Spring Bonnie has so much storytelling potential, and I find it really interesting on top of this theory aging well. At the time, a detail that dissuaded many from this theory was the fact that Golden Freddy had 4 fingers. It's a pretty common piece of evidence that's used in these arguments, and people use that to explain that it couldn't be worn. Golden Bonnie. In 2015, Daco posted a video talking about the Golden Bonnie animatronic that would later be known as Springtrap, and analyzed it, coming up with different theories. He talked about it being a Golden Bonnie suit, which might sound safe in retrospect because it aged well, as it ended up being a Spring Bonnie suit, but with so many people talking about salvage and hybrid, it was kinda drowned out by a lot of fans. A cool point to note is at 146 in the video, Dako says it looks very glitchy, and repeats this word a lot, which isn't foreshadowing or anything, but it's pretty cool because there would end up being a glitch trap later on in the series. As I'm going through these old videos, I'm starting to notice a lot of these little coincidences, and I'll point them out, but it doesn't necessarily mean anything, they're just cool details that I wanted to include. Also in this video, Dako points out how the jump scare sound doesn't sound like a child's, like in the previous games, just more of a whispering sound. Still human, he clarifies, but makes it a point about it not being a child. This aged really well, as when the game was released, it was Purple Guy who was revealed to be Springtrap, and ended up getting spring locked in the suit, which caused the possession to take place. Up until this point, common knowledge on the FNAF games was that the animatronics were possessed by children, and sure there were other theories, but suggesting that the Springtrap animatronic was an adult before FNAF 3 was even out, and being right, is pretty cool. Crying Child is Purple Guy's son. This by no means was the only early Crying Child theory that says he's the Purple Guy's son, but I really want to cover this one because it's really interesting story-wise. Although the only thing that aged well is that the Crying Child is William Afton's son. In a Reddit post by user silverstripe_, made about 11 years ago, they would theorize that the child is the son of the Purple Guy, and that the bite of 87, in this interpretation being the Crying Child's death, caused by the bullies, would result in the Purple Guy luring the 4 bullies into a secret room, murder them, and stuff them into suits, causing the missing children's incident. The post then mentions how the Crying Child figures this out and forces his father into the suit, and quote, Springlock kills him. I just want to include this theory because while it's not the most accurate thing ever, not only does it make for a neat story, a lot of future theories would mention how the bite of 83, the actual date of the Crying Child's bite incident, was the catalyst to William Afton starting to murder children for a wide range of reasons. A popular theory is that William Afton wanted to understand Remnant after noticing signs of possession, and others say the incident drove him mad. But there's a few different interpretations, so you can just take your pick. Chica's cupcake is alive. I can't believe I'm talking about this, but according to a Reddit post covering old theories back in 2014, there's a theory about Chica's cupcake being alive or also possessed. And nowadays, there's a kind of reasonable theory that the cupcake could also be possessed by Susie's dog. Honestly, this would be wild, and with how the movie fails to even address what the cupcake is, I'll take anything at this point. I mean, is it part of the Chica animatronic? Is it also possessed by the same kid, but it's like a robot minion? I don't really know. I wouldn't even mention it to begin with, but the cupcake was a menace in the FNAF movie, directly leading to William Afton getting springlocked. So, I don't know. It'd just be interesting to get some kind of direct answer, at least in the movie, for sure. If you like hearing about Five Nights at Freddy's theories and missed the last video, then you will definitely like part 1 where I cover more FNAF theories that age well. Or even this other one where I talk about theories that didn't age well. If you want to see a part 3, make sure to subscribe and let me know down in the comments. If enough people like the video, I'll make a part 3. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and as always, I hope you're a bit less bored.